You know that moment where you reach into your pocket and your speech isn't there? That's not one of these moments. It's okay. Right, I have it here. I feel very at home, I've got to say, because yesterday evening I was at a Harry Potter book night. We were all dressed like this. It was great. Vice-Chancellor, distinguished guests, graduates, families and friends, I'm delighted and deeply honoured to accept this doctorate. It's at moments like this that I feel prone to imposter syndrome. My very good friend, the writer Neil Gaiman, describes this as the feeling that at any moment there'll be a knock on the door, and when you open it, a man with a clipboard tells you that it's all over and now you have to go and get a real job. One that doesn't involve sitting at the bottom of the garden in a shed making things up. As a schoolboy, I was the kid in the class who loved drawing, and on several occasions got into trouble for doodling on the covers of my exercise books. You'll never get anywhere with this sort of behaviour, Riddell. I had a very brief sporting career, which ended with a disastrous trial for the school rugby team, where I was ordered from the field at half-time for having a completely mud-free kit. So I took up tennis, or rather my own version of the game, pretend tennis. The school booked tennis courts at a local park, and after the games master had taken the register, we were left to it. I used to sneak out of Kennington Park, cross the river to the Tate Gallery, and there I would spend my Wednesday afternoons volleying with the abstract expressionists, studying the surrealist clay court game, and admiring J.M.W. Turner's backhand. It was a physical education of sorts, long hours walking through the collections, practicing my favourite thing, looking. And after looking, drawing. I like to think of this as my creative truancy period. Later, after graduating from what was then Brighton Polytechnic in 1984, I started my career doing the rounds of London publishing houses, showing my portfolio with limited success, until I met the man with the eyebrows. His name was Klaus Pfluger, and he ran a publishing house called Anderson Press and had spectacularly bushy eyebrows. I was mesmerized. I apologize right now for this terrible accent. These illustrations are perfectly adequate, he said with a deep German accent. But there are your stories. I was an illustrator, not a writer. I had no story, so I lied. I do have a story, I said, but I left it at home. Bring in this story of yours tomorrow, Klaus said. I want to read it. So I went home and, in a blind panic, dredged up a memory from my childhood of lying awake at night convinced that there was something scary lurking beneath my bed. I wrote a reassuring story about a benign, cuddly monster called Mr. Underbed and took it into Anderson Press the next day. This is perfectly fine, said Klaus, his eyebrows rising and falling. I will publish it. So that's the secret, I thought to myself, when I picked myself up from the carpet. I won't wait to be commissioned to illustrate writers' stories. I'll write my own so I can do the pictures. So that's what I did and have been doing ever since. Then one day, the European editor of The Economist read my seminal work on the nature of the European Union, The Trouble with Elephants, to his 3-year-old, and gave me a job illustrating articles in the magazine. This led to work at other newspapers, and eventually I joined The Observer as their political cartoonist in 1995, a job I still have, despite once drawing a semi-erect Tony Blair popping out of Bill Clinton's trousers. And yes, I'm sorry. And more recently, Theresa May as a pair of expensively shod feet sticking out of a Brexit dustbin. That one never gets old. Not to mention Donald Trump as an orange baby in dirty diapers, before they actually made that big blimp. The only encouraging thing I can find to say about the times we live in is that it's a great time to be a political cartoonist. In 2015, I became the Children's Laureate, a role that certainly got me out of the shed at the bottom of the garden. I went to an LGBT conference at the Museum of London and listened to Derek Jacobi read a picture book about 2 male penguins at Brooklyn Zoo who hatched an egg together. I illustrated the Human Rights Act for Amnesty International, my little book of big freedoms, in a hotel room in Dublin. I drew live for poets on National Poetry Day at the South Bank, ending with PJ Harvey performing a poem about an ejaculating billy goat. I didn't see that one coming. I drew at the all-party parliamentary group for libraries at the House of Lords in a very well-heated room. What you've got to remember, one of the Lords told me, is that this is essentially an old people's home. I shared a box at the Globe Theatre with the actor Tom Hiddleston during the BBC's 500-word story competition and discussed film roles. I think, Tom, I told him, that the new James Bond should be an overweight middle-aged cartoonist. I illustrated Lauren Laverne's playlist live on air on Radio 6, crawled about on my hands and knees in David Walliams' extremely large kitchen, sketching his son, Alfred, and was given a gold Blue Peter badge by Lindsay, who was dressed as the witch from Narnia. Very, very excited by that. I've got to say, I'm going to go off script very, very quickly here. I was at Brighton Station after I was awarded the Blue Peter badge. It was on my lapel. And there was a little girl in front of me with her dad. She turned around and said, "Is that a gold Blue Peter badge?" And I said, yes, it is. And then she looked me up and down and said, "Why did they give it to you?" I got very embarrassed, couldn't explain. But my abiding memories of the last few years are of the libraries I've visited. It was in these inspiring places that I witnessed the extraordinary work librarians do, quietly and tirelessly, in our communities and schools up and down the country. Their dedication and diligence made me feel humble, but also profoundly grateful. Without the work of librarians promoting literacy and turning children into lifelong readers, I really would have to get a proper job. Finally, I'd like to finish with a quote from my friend Neil Gaiman for all of you who are about to embark on a career in the arts. But I think this also is applicable to everyone graduating. Remember that whatever discipline you're in, whether you're a musician or a photographer, a fine artist or a cartoonist, a writer, a dancer, a designer, whatever you do, you have one thing that's unique. You have the ability to make art. And for me and for so many of the people I've known, that's been a lifesaver, the ultimate lifesaver. It gets you through the good times and it gets you through the other ones. Life is sometimes hard. Things go wrong in life, in love, in business, and in friendship, and in health, and in all the other ways that life can go wrong. And when things get tough, this is what you should do. Make good art. I'm serious. Husband runs off with a politician, make good art. Leg crushed and then eaten by a mutated boa constrictor, make good art. Inland revenue on your trail, make good art. Cat exploded, make good art. Somebody on the internet thinks that what you do is stupid or evil or it's all been done before, make good art. Probably things will work out somehow and eventually time will take the sting away, but that doesn't matter. Do what only you do best, make good art. And make it on the other days as well. Thank you.